Over the last few years, we've had a lot of questions about wheat pre-emerge herbicides, and we have seen wheat pre-emerge herbicides get used on a lot more acres. I think this is incredibly important because as we're trying to prevent weed resistance, as we're trying to have great weed control and high yields, you can do it pretty cost effectively by using a pre. So we want to talk about your options today.
When you think about the crop of wheat, it's a grass crop. And what weeds are going to be the most difficult to control? Well, in most cases, it's the grasses. Now, depending on where you're at in the country, it could be a broadleaf, but let's start with the grasses to begin with. Oftentimes when we're looking at grass control for winter wheat, we're looking at cheatgrass as being a big concern. Now, moisture conditions in the fall are going to really play into this, and we often get the question, all right, well, I'm not going to have cheatgrass coming until I get some moisture here to get it to start. I fully understand that. I also understand that if you're using a pre-emerge herbicide, it may have some contact activity, but you're really relying on soil residual to control the later flushes of weeds, and to get that soil residual to start working, you do need some moisture as well.
All right, let's talk a little about product choices. What I always take a look at is what can I use as a grass herbicide in winter wheat, and unfortunately we're dealing with primarily ALS herbicides. The one I really like is Prepare, that allows me to save things like Outrider, PowerFlex, and Olympus for later on. When I mention Outrider, PowerFlex, and Olympus, those are traditionally the cheatgrass products, the downy brome products in winter wheat. Unfortunately, all of them have pretty long residual. PowerFlex has the least amount of residual, and Outrider would have the most amount of residual. So if we're in corn and soybean country and there's some winter wheat, we don't typically recommend using Olympus or Outrider just because of the long residual. But in true wheat country where that's about all that's raised, or maybe it's wheat fallow or continuous wheat, that's where Outrider and Olympus really have a nice fit because of their long residual. So anyway, I come back to Prepare. Why do I recommend Prepare? Because it's halfway decent on cheatgrass and a lot of other grasses, but it also has broadleaf activity. And it's very inexpensive. A lot of guys are using 0.2 ounces. You could use 0.3 ounces, the labeled rate. You're going to spend in the range of $3 to $6, something like that. So it doesn't cost a lot of money. You get a lot of weed control. Yes, it's not going to be perfect, but at least it's going to suppress a lot of different weeds.
One other soil residual herbicide that's starting to get talked about a little bit more is Zidua. Now, it's not a true pre that you're going to put it out and then plant wheat later, but it is one of those products that gives you a different group. It's a group 15 herbicide rather than a group 1 or a group 2 like Brian was talking about. And it's one that gives you some pretty good control on certain grass species. So if this one happens to fit into your rotation with Italian ryegrass or something like that being a problem weed, it could be something just to diversify your herbicide options that you're using in your field.
The big thing I'd stress here is you're not going to get 100% control out of any of these products we've mentioned so far. They're all going to help. They're all going to give you, hopefully, increased yield because of reduced weed competition, but don't expect they're going to be perfect, especially Prepare or even Zidua. Darren mentioned Italian ryegrass. Well, you're not going to kill Italian ryegrass with one shot of Zidua. No way. It's absolutely going to reduce the competition. It's going to kill some of the weeds, but it just won't be 100%. Nevertheless, we still think these are good investments in most cases, especially where you have medium to heavy weed pressure. You should see a lot better yield because early on, when that grass plant gets started, the wheat I'm talking about here, it needs no competition. That's when it really thrives. So if you have the pre-emerge herbicide out there with a product like Prepare, for example, you're just off to a lot better start, and hopefully this should all pay out in the end.
I've got two final points. So Brian mentioned if you haven't tried this before, here's situations you should try it. The other thing that I see many farmers doing is leaving some check strips where they don't have that pre down just to see what it looks like. Unfortunately, many people leave those checks unintentionally. They go a little wide with the sprayer, or they miss a little spot in the field for whatever reason, and you see that. If you do leave a few check strips, it's probably the only time you'll ever do it, and you'll wonder, why did I leave such a big check strip? Because I have a lot of weeds to clean up. The other thing is, if you have broadleaf weeds, while these ALS type products and even the group 15 Zidua, they do have some activity on broadleaves. You'll get a lot more activity out of broadleaves with Sharpen. Now, Sharpen doesn't have grass activity, but if you've got, say, Roundup resistant kochia, or you've got a number of winter annual broadleaf weeds out there, Sharpen could be a great option for you. It has awesome burn down activity and it has residual for broadleaf weeds.
Darren mentioned the burn down out of Sharpen, Prepare, and most of these other products have burn down as well. Zidua does not though. But the big thing I'd stress here is make sure you start clean. Whether it's with tillage or a herbicide, start clean, get your weed off to a good start in the beginning.
Tillage may not be the solution for our weed of the week. We'll tell you what is coming up next.